morning. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker today. We're all aware of Tom's background as a priest, a pastor, and a therapist. Tom is able, through his knowledge of things spiritual and with the help of a right sense of humor, to introduce a modicum of insight into us that we may not have been able to think of before, or perhaps it's something we forgot and he's reminded us. I give to you Tom Baker.
My goodness. I feel like Arlo Guthrie. Let's see. Well, let's see if there's water or vodka in the little thing here. Smells like water.
It's water.
Yes. Well, when I was in my first parish, there was an odd architectural aberration in which the altar was connected to the sacristy. The sacristy is where the priest gets dressed, or he puts on his vestments. There was a whispering gallery between the altar and the sacristy. So if you were standing at the center of the altar, you could hear what anyone was saying in the sacristy. Even if they were whispering, you could hear it just as plain as day. And one cold day, I was saying Mass, and I heard, as plain as day, two women talking about my overcoat. And they were saying, Father wears an overcoat which is much too fancy and expensive for a priest to wear. It's just not like the rest of us can even afford. It's a beautiful overcoat, but we don't think it's proper. And the other woman said, I agree with you so completely. Not only his overcoat, but that yellow car that he drives. That is not a priestly car. A priest should drive a car that's either black or navy blue. And he drives a yellow car, and I agree in that gray overcoat that he has, that he says his mother gave him, but I bet he just bought it out of that big salary that he probably gets. He thinks he's better than us. And my mother did give me that overcoat. In fact, she gave me that car as well. And I was so furious. How dare you? How dare you say that about me, the priest? Because I had invented that persona of myself as Tom the priest. When we invent the people that we are, we have to obey the image that we make. We often invent the person we are from what we lacked as a child growing up. My father was distant. He was always behind a book or a newspaper. And he didn't really relate to me very much. So I grew up in this ironic sort of way, in that I was a father for myself. As a priest, people even called me Father. But my role determined my choices and my decisions. In other words, what I made for me or for myself that was safe, it also limited me in a big way. I remember a woman who wanted to discuss abortion. And I said, I'm a priest and you're a Catholic, so there's no discussion. I shut down her choice. Not even God does that. Several weeks ago, a woman told me about her dentist, and I was reminded of myself as a priest. The woman was at her dentist, and she was in the chair, and she laid a book on her stomach that was entitled The Destiny of Souls. Maybe you've read it. And he asked her what it was about, and she said it was about the afterlife. And the dentist said, I am a scientist. We are made of carbon, and we return to carbon. There is no room in science for the afterlife. Shining souls, beings of light, lights of the world. No, it's carbon, carbon, carbon. His role as a scientist dictated what he could believe. It took his freedom away. We have to be careful in who we say that we are. Now, this was unlike Viktor Frankl. Remember Viktor Frankl in the prison camp? And he discovered that they could control his body, but they could not control his mind. And his mind could soar over those walls and be with his wife and his child. His mind freed him. Often our minds capture us. Our biases and our prejudices become kinds of roles that we play. They determine who we are and how we think about people. My father had his mind made up most of his life. He told me to beware of women who wore anklets. Women who wear anklets, he said, could be kind of wild. And he told me that when I got old enough to drink, to never order a colorful women's drink like a golden Cadillac or a strawberry daiquiri. People would question my masculinity. Nothing worse than that. However, at the end of his life, my father loosened his mind up. When he told that he would most likely die pretty soon, my father said to my sister, well, I look forward to going to heaven. And my sister said, well, Daddy, you're an atheist. What do you mean you're going to go to heaven? And he said, well, now that it's time, I think I'm changing my mind. A true miracle is when you change your mind about some illusion that has captured your thinking often for a long time. One illusion that I had to change was what I thought of tattoos. My parents said that sailors and northerners from Cincinnati wear tattoos. And the idea of a woman wearing a tattoo was appalling to me. Then I became a psychotherapist, and women who had had abortions and wore anklets and had tattoos needed my help. I was no longer a priest with a limit on whom I should help. Isn't that ironic? That when I was a priest, there was only a small group of people that I could actually talk to. I had no role to stop me as a psychotherapist, because psyche in Greek means soul, and therapist means doctor. I was a soul doctor. There's no earthly designation for a soul doctor, no earthly label. So I now have to help everybody and see beyond what I used to call sins and what I still see as bodily decor. I believe in heaven, but I have changed my mind about who is qualified to go to heaven. That's why a friend of mine's recent mystical experience so touched me. Her name is Vera White. She's in my Course in Miracles group. And she had a vision when she went to the beach in a bad mood. Her bad mood showed her the people with tattoos smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, getting fat and wasting their lives. You get the picture. Overweight, fast food eating losers going to hell faster than you can say demons spawn. Then it all shifted. Something happened. And she beheld light rays linking every person and saw how loved and joined each person was. The thought came to her that no one needed to change. No one needed to change. And that the world was fine the way it was. Because everyone was loved by God, by each other, and surprise of surprise, by her. At one level of consciousness, she was one with God, loving everybody. She was filled with joy. Byron Katie. Have you ever heard of Byron Katie? She's written a number of books and talks about making friends with reality. Byron Katie has said, or has asked the question, what if you could not change the world? What if the world is fulfilling its purpose just as it is? What if that's the way the classroom works? And this is really fascinating to me. What if the faces you hate are simply your own masks from this and other lifetimes? I had a past life regression in which I was insane and I was in an asylum. Sometimes in my work, I see the mask of that life and I change my mind and my heart goes out to that person. The earth is where we face the selves we made in this and other lifetimes. This facing is not punitive, but it is to promote empathy. In your and my life review, we will literally be in the other person's place, receiving both the good and bad we had to dish out. We will very simply know how it is to feel like they feel. Edgar Cayce said that Jesus had a one-word mantra that he constantly repeated to himself. And that word was others. 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 We are always left with the question of identity. Who am I? Who are you? In a real way, we are each other. We must remember that. We are linked to one another with light rays. And we already love one another. The ego in us says, you've met all the people you don't love. Somewhere in the world is that soulmate. Somewhere is that person that you will love. Somewhere is that person waiting for you. Everybody else is chopped liver. You know, they're not good enough. They're not lovable enough. Something's wrong with them. What if in another consciousness we already love everybody? That we're not searching anymore. We're saying, you're the one. Sometimes we must free our minds, like my father did, from what we know for sure, in order to remember that we adore one another and are adored by our Creator. With our abortions, our wars, our lies, our anklets, our tattoos, our golden Cadillacs, all that stuff, God says, I'm so glad to see you. I've missed you. Welcome.